Hello and welcome back. This is Connie Woods, TCG player, bringing you an update of the list we looked at last week, which is Blue Black Eldrazi, affectionately called Dimirdrazi. And there were a lot of things I liked about the deck. I've been playing it for quite a bit off of recordings as well, just to get some kind of more games and get a better feel for it. And the deck, my favorite thing about it is that it's kind of a chameleon in that uh, it can adjust to its opponent very well. It can go big and controlling against the aggressive decks. It can go aggressive and disruptive against the big decks. And even on just a game by game basis, it can change that identity, which is pretty awesome. But there were some weak points in the deck, and there were some cards that I really wanted to try out. So I made some pretty sweeping adjustments. As you can notice, I cut Inverter of Truth. While I love the card, and I think that in a couple of situations it did shine as really strong, I think that in general those situations are a little too niche, and it doesn't warrant itself often enough, which is unfortunate, but I think it's just the reality. Um, Instead, I wanted to give some other cards more slots, like Reality Smasher. Reality Smasher is kind of interesting in that it's the top of our curve, and drawing two of them can sometimes suck, but against a control opponent or an opponent where you've just kind of traded resources and you're out of things, having the fifth Reality Smasher and therefore drawing one copy more often can really make the difference. So I moved that from the sideboard into the main deck, which is a pretty substantial change, especially now that Inverter Truth's gone. We no longer had the extra two 6/6s to throw to Titan's Presence, and I felt we were struggling against Planeswalkers a little bit, so I added a couple Ruination Pass in the removal slot. This is a pretty substantial change, both because this card is much harder to cast, but because of the versatility that this gives us dealing with Planeswalkers, or also in the late game being able to awaken into a 4/4, colorless 4/4 even, which can certainly matter in this deck. Yeah, it's not not like a extreme swap like Hangerback Walkers is, which we'll get to in a second, but it is a meaningful swap. Oh, and I also have different art. That's a tilt. Let's fix that. Somebody would have yelled at me for it. Oh wait, not what I did Ruination instead of Ruinous. Oh, I only have two, and they're different arts. All right, well, then you can't be mad at me. If I had more and they were different and they were the same art, then I would swap to it. But unfortunately, it's at least the same guy, I think, on both arts. So you can't be mad at me for that. All right. Another small but meaningful swap, because that's all really that happened was a lot of swaps. I mean, there's a couple different directions I decided to go with the deck, but in general, these are kind of almost card for card swaps. I took out the two Seagate Wreckage and replaced them with Tomb of the Spirit Dragons, which were in the sideboard before. I think that the ability to just gain life is just much more meaningful in a majority of games, whereas Seagate Wreckage, its ability to draw cards is always meaningful, but its ability to draw cards is not always turned on, especially with cards like Counterspells in our sideboard, cards like Reality Smasher that we sometimes can't cast, cards like Transgress the Mind that if we are casting it, sometimes we know we're just going to throw it out there for literally nothing just to get a card out of our hand, which never feels great. Cards like Thought Knotseer, which, if our opponent has an empty hand, again, doesn't feel great casting it. And then we also have cards like Fathom Feeder, which are already filling the role of the Seagate Wreckage to a degree. The late game flooded out mode, you can feed everything to Fathom Feeder. So all in all, also Bear of Silence being another guy that is situational. All in all, it just felt a little awkward with the Seagate Wreckage, so I replaced it with Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. I played a few games with this so far. It's been awesome. Just the ability to just gain a couple life in the mid to late game against a lot of decks comes up and it matters. So I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Other swaps. Let's see. So I guess the big one, which I've not gotten to yet, and everything else is like -1 card. Like we put -1 Fathom Feeder, -1 Infiltrator, -1 Matter Reshaper, and to fill in that void of those -1s, we added 4 Hangerback Walkers. I'm not 100% on Hangerback Walker. The thing is, Hangerback Walker is an extremely strong card. It also has an awesome synergy with Ruins of Orneries, where this just effectively is 2 mana for Hangerback Walker, if you look at it that way, because it gives you an extra X. So it provides 2 mana for Hangerback Walker specifically. In addition to that, it obviously makes a 1/1 token afterwards when it comes into play, makes that into a 2/2 flyer, which is relevant. I worried a little bit about Hangerback Walker just because of how strong Virulent Plague is in the format right now, and because we want a couple of these in our sideboard to beat up on all of the token decks. But I figure if we do bring in Virulent Plague, we can cut a couple of Hangerback Walkers. Excuse me. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice to, I think, help out most matchups. Hangerback Walker is aggressive, but also very utility, tempo-y type of card. It's not like, we're going to just beat them down with a 3/3 for 1 mana, like a Wild Nikado. But this does get very threatening very quickly after a couple turns of charging up. And then at that point, it could be your beatdown card. It could be your protection against removal, like sweepers, which is one of the reasons I felt okay going down on a Matter Reshaper, because its role is very similar to Hangerback Walkers, except it doesn't actually provide that useful of an ability much of the time. If, for example, if you hit Bearer of Silence, that's not very good. If you hit Hangerback Walker, that's not very good. Hitting Fathom Feeder, Dimensional Infiltrator, or Land is reasonable, but in general, I would say that the death trigger on Hangerback Walker is stronger for us, in theory, especially when we go to our sideboard and we're talking about Ruination Guide, which I'll get to in a little bit. But I think this card's just, in general, going to help us out a little bit more against aggro, a little bit more against control than like the likes of Matter Reshaper, the likes of the 4th Fathom Feeder, the likes of the 4th Dimensional Infiltrator. So I went ahead and giving this a shot. I'm pretty excited to try it out, but we'll see if it pans out or not. The sideboard was a bunch of adjustments were made to it based on those main deck changes. So oftentimes what we do is we play this kind of safe attack your hand, attack your life total strategy in game 1 against just random decks. And then we really want to tailor that to either be an aggro beater-upper or a control beater-upper post-board. So on the aggro side of things, we have these Horribly Arise, 3 of them, 3 Flaying Tendrils, 2 Virulent Plagues. Obviously, not all these cards are always going to come in. Sometimes Virulent Plague isn't going to do anything. Sometimes Flaying Tendrils isn't going to do anything, etc. But in general, against the various 4-color aggro decks, against like Siege Rhinos, Kalidas, Butcher of the Horde, all those style things. Also against aggro, like a mono red or red black, even the Dragons deck, for example, where Horribly Arise is going to counter a Thundermaw or something along those lines. These cards are all coming in and providing some amount of utility for us, which is nice. Against Rally specifically, we have a kind of a mix sideboard plan where we bring in a few things and take out a few things, so I'm going to get to that in a second. But in general, these are going to be, I guess this Despise as well. The Despise is a new card. It was the 3rd Duress, but I decided to switch it to a Despise. So we'll test here. But this is, in theory, also good against a deck like Dragons, which is why I went ahead and added one. But yeah, we'll see how this plays out. But all these cards are kind of your anti-aggro, anti-mid-range creature package. Flaying Tendrils obviously is going to be important against Rally, but there's also cards over here that are important against Rally, so I'll wait on that deck. Then against Control, you have this little package over here. Despise kind of swings both ways, if you will, because obviously taking out Planeswalkers, taking out a Dragonlord Silumgar, taking out basically anything out of the ramp deck. It is something Despise can do. Obviously, Duress is also very good against those decks because it's still going to take out a Planeswalker, it's going to take out a counterspell, something like that. But I figured the 2-1 split was kind of nice with Transgress the Mind bridging the gap and doing both, and Thought-Knot Seer obviously doing everything. So, gave that a bit of a mix-up. But these all come against Control. Negate comes against Control as kind of the 3rd Duress, if you will. 2 Ruination Guides and the Dimensional Infiltrator. So this is a new little package. Basically, it says, if you're going to be slow at beating us, let's just make that not possible. Like, let's disrupt you with a couple Duresses, with Transgress the Mind, with a Thought-Knot Seer. Let's rip apart your hand. And then instead of giving you 5-6 turns of reprieve time and building up and being able to get back in with a Wrath or something, instead we're gonna play a couple 2/1 flyers, maybe add a couple counters from Warden Reef, and then play a Ruination Guide and just go for the throat as quickly as possible. Finish off the Reality Smasher, have a Hangerback Walker in play for protection, do whatever we need to do. Cut stuff like Wasteland Strangler, for example, which is not going to be good against Control deck. and instead just go full on disruption aggro. And that's the theory behind the Ruination Guides. I had one of these in the main deck for a while, and it was decent. So I want to give it a shot as a sideboard card. Thing is, it's pretty awful against aggro because its ability. I mean, I guess it's not pretty awful. It lets your guys trade up to a certain degree, but the ingest never comes online, and in general, it just dies to some random lightning bolt effect. But the idea here is just bring in evasion, bring in lords, and just go to town as quickly as possible. So we'll see if that works out. And like I said, this is kind of your anti-control package. Against Rally, we want to do stuff like Flaying Tendrils, which is Exiles cards, and it's very good against all their Zulaport and Cutthroat draws and whatnot. We also want to bring in Horribly Awry, because again, it Exiles, deals with Reflector Mage, deals with Catacomb Sifters and mana creatures and stuff of all varieties. So all this is important because we're slowly trying to get rid of their graveyard. Then we also bring in the Duresses, because taking out Collecting Company and Rally are both very big. The Negate also comes in, again, for those two cards I just named. And then Despise, I'm unsure of. When this was a third Duress that came in, I'm not sure if I bring in Despise or not, because it is very nice to hack a creature, like a mana creature, on turn one, but it is not the best to hit to look at their hand, see a creature, and see a Rally that you can't take, and then you take the creature and put it in the graveyard for the Rally. So that's not the best feeling in the world. So I'm not 100% on the Despise coming in that matchup, but we'll give it a shot. And then against Ramp, we kind of do one of these hybrid things again. We're almost always bringing in the Despise, the Duresses, and the Negates. Horribly Awry and Flame Tendrils can come in if they're very heavy creature-based Ramp, which a lot of decks are not these days. The Infiltrator and the Ruination Guide plan can also come in, but you have to be very certain you're not going to get Kozilek's Return if you do that. So it's kind of an interesting matchup where we kind of evaluate as we go. In general, I'm liking this direction for the deck. I'm liking the idea of Hangerback Walkers. We have a very good group of creatures here, like a whole bunch of just 2-for-1s and just strong things in general. So I'm pretty excited about this list. We're gonna give it a shot. We're gonna run it through some matches, and we'll be right back for round one of that. And I will see you shortly.